Alright, well, welcome back and thanks for tuning in again. So we're going to pick up where we left off 2 weeks ago on the old Roiline H884. Last week, or 2 weeks ago rather, we got held up when the valley plate gasket that I ordered was incorrect. So I've since made my own gasket and we're going to pick up and get this thing put back together and maybe even get a test run out of it today. So stay tuned. Okay, well, hopefully this is a good angle and you can see what I'm doing. So up here where the timing cover casting meets the block, I'm going to put a little bit of silicone. There, over here, same thing. And in a couple more spots too. Up here where the gasket is very thin in the front of the timing cover. Put a little bit there, just a bit. Then I'm going to put a little bit in the center here, just to help hold the gasket stationary. Let's see, a little bit over here, and a little bit in the back. Okay. My homemade gasket. Kind of difficult to set on there. I set it on these dowel pins first. I did test fit this already, so I know it does fit. Okay, I think we're ready for the front half of the valley plate. This has to set on those two dowel pins up front. Just like that. Now at the joint here, between the front and the half, or the front half and the rear half, I'm going to put a little bead of silicone as well. So just lift the back half of that up slightly. Or work that silicone in there. Okay. And I'm going to put a little bit of, I should get a rag here. I'm going to put a little bit of silicone on this flange here to hold that gasket. Again, this really isn't for sealing. This is more just to keep the gasket semi-stationary. I could use high tack, but I chose to go with silicone this time. All right. We'll set the rear half on. I should say that I doused the lifter bores and everything with oil before putting this cover on. Okay, and I'm gonna tighten these bolts first. That'll draw the two halves of the timing cover together. Because remember, the front can't move because it's on two dowel pins up here. So I want to set them so, I mean, what am I trying to say here? Should we cut this video? I don't know. Might as well just keep going. What I'm trying to say is the front cover can't move forward or back because it's sitting on dowel pins. So all of the adjustment has to happen from on the rear cover. So I want to draw these together, and then I'll tighten the front two bolts, which you can't see, the two bolts that come in to the front of the cover from the water pump. Once I tighten those, I should say once I get them snug, I'll install all the rest of them, snug those down, tighten the front two that go through the water pump, and then tighten the rest. That's my process. Okay. Okay, well, so now that they're all snugged down, what I'm going to do is tighten the valley plate from the center working out, and then tighten the two bolts that go up through the water pump. So I'm going in no particular order here because I don't think it's all that important. Okay, well, that's a little milestone. Valley plate's back on. So I'm gonna put the breather back in and cover these holes up for now. Clean up the heads and clean up the manifolds, and I think we're ready to put the manifolds on. Okay, so we got the manifold gasket sealing surfaces cleaned up, but before we assemble it, I wanted to show you a couple things that are interesting to me. First, around the coolant ports here, can you see where it looks like there's been a repair? It doesn't look like a braze, it looks like a weld. You can definitely see it right there. So, where I don't know if this was done at the factory or if this head's been off and been serviced and repaired at some point. I've talked to a couple different people that say that this is probably the way this head left the factory. So, when the casting initially came out of the mold, you can see a few of them here as well. Here's a good one right here. See that? So the casting must have been flawed, and there was just not enough gasket sealing surface here, so they built it up with weld before the initial machining. That's what I'm guessing. Not sure though, but many of the coolant ports have it. So I got these ports about as cleaned up as I can. I didn't really want to go too crazy because I didn't want to remove any material between the exhaust manifold or the exhaust port and the coolant gallery, being that that surface is so narrow as it is. So I pulled all the studs out as well. I'm just putting them back in with a little bit of anti-seize on the threads. So I ended up, I ran a stone, a nice like ground flat stone over these surfaces here, just to try to true them up a little bit. So let me go ahead and put them studs in, and we'll set the manifolds on. Alright, well, let's see if we can get these manifolds set on here. Got the gaskets in place. I put a little bit of high tack around the exhaust ports and the water ports as well, the coolant ports. Just a little bit of extra insurance. That's a high-tack gasket sealant. It's tacky now. It's had a few minutes to set. And I've got the block off plates for the, well, that would feed the intake manifold exhaust if this was a gasoline engine. So let's set the intake on there. Come around that side. You'll notice I've removed the fuel system to make this thing a little bit lighter. It is quite heavy. Big piece of cast iron. Okay. There's 2 dowel pins here to keep it aligned on that side. Then double check the exhaust manifold's clean, and we can set this manifold, this exhaust on. Whoa, easy there. There's no lightening these things up. Whew. Okay. Just going to put 2 nuts on these studs here to hold this in place, just so it's not rocking around. Okay. Come around behind you and we'll set the other side on. Nice and clean. Okay. You can definitely see how all this weight adds up to this almost 2,000 pound engine. All these big pieces of cast iron. Alright, well, I'm going to go ahead and get these torqued down, and then I think we'll move on to the oil pump. I'm sick of working up top here. Let's get the lower end done. We can put the oil pump back on, button the oil pan up, and go from there. Okay, so we're here at the bench. We've got the oil pump disassembled pretty much all the way. So here we got the body set up in the vise. Got a dial indicator. The first thing we're going to check is the end clearance, or I should say the clearance between the gear and the body on that shaft. So but before we do that, take a look inside the pump. There's the driving pump gear. Looks pretty good in there to me. Got the idler gear here. Looks pretty fair. And the cover plate. See, You can see a little bit of wear, but I mean, it's really nothing. You can't even feel it. So let's put you up on the tripod here. Is the light still on? Yeah. Okay. We'll check that end clearance. Okay. So the spec, let me get it. Let's see. Spec is drive gear end clearance 2 to 5 thousandths. Right there. So what I'm gonna do is pan down a little bit. So I'm just gonna take my finger and gently press up on the end of the shaft, and then release the pressure, let it fall up and down a few times. That's the best way I could figure to test this thing. Should be fairly accurate. So that was 1, 2.5 thou. I think there's a little film of oil under that gear that I didn't quite get out. So if I press up, I can get it to about, let's see, 1, 2, 3.5 thou. Drop it, goes back to 1 thou. So there's 4 thou. That looks like 3 thousandths to me, which is perfect. So let's what's the next thing we want to check? Let me move that indicator out of the way, and we'll check the end clearance between the gear, the driving gear, and the idler gear, and the face plate or the cover plate. We also have to check the shaft clearance as well. So let me reposition. Okay, the next thing we're going to check is, let's check the idler shaft clearance. This is the clearance between the end here and the cover plate, and that's listed as 31 thousandths. So pretty much 1/32. Well, 1/32 is what the book said. So I'm just going to use this little straight edge, little ruler, 6-inch little ruler, and we got a 30 thousandths feeler gauge here. And that makes it under with just a little bit of clearance to spare. So I'm going to call that good. Next, we're going to check the gear. I put this one back in. We're going to check the gear end clearance. Make sure I get it lined up with the tooth it was originally. Okay. So the end clearance between the gear faces, or the ends of the gears and the plate, is 2.5 thousandths to 6.5 thousandths. Okay. Let me get the feeler gauge out for that. Let's try 3 thousandths. We'll take a 3 thousandths feeler gauge and see where we're at. So I can just balance that straight edge right there. That's 3 thousandths. I don't have a 2.5 thousandths feeler gauge. So that's 3. Let me go up to 4. See if I can fit a 4 thousandths gauge under there. No. Okay, so I'm going to call that 3 thousandths. Let's check the idler gear. Let me get the 3 thousandths feeler back out. Am I blocking your sight? I kind of am, aren't I? Let me come over here and try this. A little bit difficult to do from this angle. See, I can get the gauge under there, but I can feel it pushing the ruler up. Oh no, wait, I think it's got it there. I have it over here, but I don't have it over here. That's a little interesting. I wonder if the housing itself isn't quite flat. Let's try the next one down. I have is a 1.5 thou. This is annoying. The damn shaky hands. Cut. Okay, let's check a couple other clearance specs while we're in here. So the first thing I want to look at is well, I'll show you here. This gap between the scale and the idler gear shaft. That's listed in the manual as 1/32 of an inch. So I'm just going to use a 30 thousandths feeler gauge because that's the closest thing I have to a 32nd. 32nds, 31.2 thousandths or something like that. So right, that's 30. So it slips in there with a little bit of clearance. So I'm going to call that good. And I guess we can put the idler gear back in. I marked just with a Sharpie the alignment of the gears. I should say the mating teeth. This one got rubbed off, but I can tell by the wear mark that it's the correct one. So this gap between the face of the gear and what would be the face plate of the pump, or the end plate of the pump, is listed at 2.5 to 6.5 thousandths. So let's try a 3 thousandths gauge. See where that gets us. That looks like it's going to be about it. Oh yeah, that's 3 thousandths right there. Yep, I can feel it slipping in there without dragging. Let's try a 4 thousandths gauge. Let's see if we have 4 thousandths of clearance. Nope, doesn't look like it. Can't get the 4 thousandths in there. So I'm going to call that 3 thousandths. Let's check the idler gear. We'll do with the 3 thousandths again. Yep, that's a nice tight 3. There's no way I'm going to get a 4 in there. Maybe. No. I can kind of feel it pushing up on the scale. Yeah. That's not going to work. Definitely 3. Okay, so yeah, it's pushing up on the scale there. Okay, so we got 3 thousandths of clearance, which is perfect. And what else do we have to check? The clearance for the pump gears to the body, which is listed at 4 to 7 thousandths, which I don't really know how they expect you to check this. You could check it on the idler gear easily enough, but the driving gear, you're at the mercy of the bushing clearance, or the snugness of that bushing. So we'll check the idler. Let's see here. Wow, that's pretty tight. That's the 4 thousandths gauge. Oh, I can kind of get it in there. Let's see, can I follow the gear tooth around? Yeah, it kind of wants to bind, but it's in there. And this one, of course, we're going to have the clearance. Oop. Okay, well, oil pump looks good to me. Gonna put that back together, and I'll see you under the engine. We'll put this back on. Well, before we do anything under the engine, I figured we'd take a look at the oil pump, the pressure relief as well. So we got like a little locking nut here, end cap, spring, pretty heavy spring at that, and the piston kind of coax that out of there. Probably a good idea to flush this all out too, wouldn't it? A little bit of scuffing on that. All right, let me rinse this out, and then we'll proceed. All right, let's go ahead and hang this oil pump on here. Now, I apologize if I get in your way. I don't have a whole lot of space here, but I think this camera angle is going to be good enough so you can see what I'm doing. So alignment of the oil pump gear is accomplished by 2 dowel pins that are up on the block. Actually, I believe it's the #1 main cap which holds those dowels. Okay, that's secured. So we'll put the oil outlet and the pressure relief back on. Make sure those surfaces are clean. And this might be a little finicky, just because it's an odd piece that has to sit. Well, actually, that's wrong, isn't it? It's got to sit how? It's got to sit like this. Yeah, just like that. So let's see if I can get 1 bolt on each started. I'm going to try to let that gasket sit right there. Okay. Now I'm really going to be in your way, I think. or are you in my way? I don't know. This would probably be easier from the other side, but we got that oil cooler right in the way, and take that off. We're going to take the oil filter housing off and be a whole job. So feels like we got those two started. Yep. So this is oil out of the pump, past the pressure relief valve, and up into the filter housing. Okay. We're going to tighten this up similar to how we tightened the valley plate, or the front half of the valley plate. I'm going to get these two here snugged up so that this is mated to the pump body. And the holes, I should say, the holes that are in this casting are oversized to account for any differences in gasket thickness. So if this gasket was a little bit thicker, the whole assembly would be, toward the rear of the engine a little bit more. So you need a little bit of extra give in the bolt holes. Okay, they're 1/2 inch. Okay, same thing here. The thickness of that gasket would change this rotational position. So now that they're a little bit more than hand tight, they're just snug. Go ahead and do the same thing with these. Oops, slipped off there. Alright, so now they're snug. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten these. And then tighten the outlet. You know what I need to build is a big rotisserie that I can put generators this size on and just spin them around upside down for this kind of work. Yeah. You know what? I didn't even think of that. I've got a pit over on the other side of the garage there. I could be in the pit, standing in the pit and working on this. What am I doing? Oh well. All right, let's put the pickup on. Okay, that is just going to sit right there. Little bracket, little support bracket there. So, got 2 more bolts, little short ones. One more little bolt for this bracket here. The weird thing is this bolt and this one had a little bit of paint on them, which was strange to me. Almost like they came from somewhere else in the engine at some point. But I kept all the hardware together. Just must be a remnant from a previous repair or disassembly. Okay. All right, that looks good. So, yeah, I think that's about it. You might have heard a little bit of jingling inside there, like little loose pieces. I tried to clean those out, but I don't know if everybody's familiar with what this is. The reason this hinges like this is because this is essentially a float, like almost like what's in a carburetor. It behaves the same way. Not to control the oil supply or anything, but this top dome here is sealed. There's actually a little solder blob there. Let me take you off the stand. Wow, you couldn't even see what I was doing. Sorry about that. Let me start over. So this pickup here rotates, and it behaves almost like a float in a carburetor. This whole little dome is sealed. There's a little solder blob there, and those little pieces that are jingling around are inside there, and there's no way for me to get them out. So the idea is that with the changing oil level in the pan, this thing always rides at the top or near the top of the oil. So it's not all the way at the very bottom sucking up the sludge. It kind of rides it depending on if the engine is rocking around, if it was an immobile piece of equipment. So that's the idea. That's what that jingling is. So don't worry about that. So, all right, well, oil pump's on. I think that's going to wrap up this video. Sorry we didn't get to firing it up today, but the day is getting long, and I've got a couple other things I got to get done. So I think what I'll do off camera is put the oil pan back on. Got my new gasket made for that, and when we come back in the next video, that'll be on. We'll put the distributor in. We'll get the initial timing set on the distributor. We'll put the fuel system on and fill it with coolant, and then we'll be ready for a start. So I promise in the next video we'll do a first test fire. So thanks for sticking with it, and thanks for watching.